Hey everyone, welcome back to the Indie Composers podcast. My name is LJ and I'm joined by my co-host John. How are you doing, John?
So far, so good, as usual.
Today we are super excited to be joined by our special guest, Ilan Eshkeri. Ilan is an award-winning composer who has composed the soundtracks for films like Shaun the Sheep, Still Alice, 47 Ronin, and Centurion. He has also composed the soundtrack for video games like Sims 4. Ilan has collaborated with astronaut Tim Peake and the European Space Agency on a film documenting his mission to the International Space Station. He is currently writing music for A Perfect Planet, his fourth collaboration with the renowned naturalist David Attenborough. Ilan has also been nominated for an Ivor Novello for the Young Victoria, as well as a BAFTA award for the Snowman and the Snowdog. Ilan, how are you doing today?
Great. Wow, what an introduction. Thank you. Thanks very much.
Oh, of course.
Yeah.
It sounds much more impressive when you leave out all the things that happened in between.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. So for the first question, you have composed the music for films, for TV shows. You've worked with bands and also ballets. However, you have also composed the soundtrack for The Sims 4. So, based on your experiences in composing for these various forms of media, have any of these posed like more of a challenge for you than the others?
Every project and every discipline brings its own challenges, and maybe if I could start with what for me is combines all of it is that I've always loved narrative storytelling in music, and so all the work that I do is about narrative and about storytelling. And so on that level, that makes them all very similar. And creatively, the creative process I find is very similar, because if you have to make up a tune, then you have to make up a tune for a ballet, or you have to make up a tune for a video game, or you have to make up a tune for a film or a TV show. The art of making up a tune is always the same.
Mm-hmm.
And that's always the most difficult bit, because that's the bit that's very hard to teach or to learn. Right. But what is different about them, I think, is the sort of structural discipline. It's the requirements of the platform that you're delivering on, and you do have to think about that creatively. The choices that you would make in a cinema are very different to the choices that you would make on a video game, because in a cinema, when you're at the end of a scene, and it's nighttime, and there's been two people on the screen and they've been whispering to each other, and in the cinema it's very dark and it's very quiet, and when you cut to the next day, the next morning, suddenly the screen is very bright, and the whole auditorium that you're sitting in, the whole theater that you're sitting in, is filled with light. And suddenly it's a physical experience. Your eyes dilate, you're aware of the people next to you, and people are rustling their popcorn again because it's daytime, and somehow we find that more acceptable. So I think when you have a scene change like that on a television screen, it's a much less physical experience than in the movie theater. And so there are these kinds of things to think about in the different disciplines. If you're writing a ballet, there's a technical requirements. I'm so sorry. I think my internet just died and then came back.
It's so completely okay. It's calling overseas.
Yeah.
What did you last hear me say? And I'll just pick up from there if that's all right.
I felt like we had come to a close of the question, and then I was going to build in on that and ask you about what was your favorite part composing for these different forms of media.
Great. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, so that's so. What has been your favorite part about composing for different forms of media?
I really like the challenge of the different disciplines, the challenge of, you collaborate with a director, with a great director like Ray Fiennes, and you find a really good creative space, and that feels completely different to collaborating with the choreographer and with ballet dancers, and they need different things from you, and and I really enjoy learning the different disciplines. And at the core of it is always just the trying to tell a really great story. Um, and the hardest thing of all, which is trying to write a great tune.
Yes.
But I think this isn't true for everyone, but for me, if you do a lot of the same stuff, it can get a bit tedious. There's only so many car chases that you can do in movies before you kind of start to run out of ideas of how to do another car chase. It stops being exciting.
Right.
And so I like to take a break and do something different. And I think that's led to me having this rather eclectic career. But I love that.
Good.
Yeah, I when we were I'm sorry. When we were preparing for the interview, it was really cool to see all of the different, just the different things that you've been a part of and the different projects. And so I want to ask, like, before all of that, what got you started in music? Was it a mentor, maybe music lessons? Like, what was the initial thing that said to you that you wanted to do this?
Well, my mum had me learn the violin from when I was 4 years old. My Russian grandfather had been early in his life a professional violinist, and he played in orchestras in Italy. Um, and I still have his violin. So my mum is a very talented pianist. So that was always playing music was always in my household, but it was not expected that I would go into music. In fact, that was, when I told my parents I wanted to go into music, that was didn't go down very well. um, but being a parent now myself, I get why.
Yeah.
But I think that I got a guitar when I was 13 years old, and like many other kids, I just decided I wanted to be a rock and roll guitarist. And so, I was in bands and played in bands at school and had bands outside of school, and we wrote songs and sang, and that was fun. My generation was Nirvana and that whole Seattle grunge, followed swiftly on by Blur and Oasis and the Britpop thing, and
Yeah.
Ash, and so all of that was my world of music, and what I was really inspired by. And also very early on in my teens was NWA and Public Enemy and the sort of explosion of the rap scene, and that was really an important part of my contemporary music education. So all of those things together, I really wanted to be in some kind of a band. And then when I was 19, through a series of bizarre connections, I got introduced to Michael Kamen, and I went to university where I studied English literature and music as a combined degree, and I spent my holidays working for the late great Michael Kamen, who was a mentor for me.
Very good.
Wow. And so what would you say has been the most fulfilling part of your career?
I think there was a point in my career where I had started. I felt like I was on a treadmill of doing film after film, and I just decided to stop. And it was very difficult because there's a point when you start out where you've got to take everything that comes your way and build your name.
Yeah.
Then there's a point in your career where you've achieved a certain amount of stuff, and you have to start deciding what is the right next choice for you. And within that positive action comes a negative action that's very hard to learn, which is how to say no. And and if you have ever, I certainly did in my early 20s. I really struggled, and I lived hand to mouth, and there were times when I was so poor I would walk to work because I didn't feel like I could afford to take the bus. And
Wow.
and not to say that I came from a very comfortable home. I could have always gone home to my mum and got a hot meal. I wasn't like, I don't want to pretend that I was in like some kind of dire straits. I mean, I was just young and struggling, like many people are.
Yeah.
And but then to go from that to being in a position where you're like, I'm going to say no to that project that's going to pay quite a good fee and might be fun to do because it's not the direction I want to take my career in. That took me a long time to learn. But once I did learn to make those decisions and I started to have the confidence to do just the things that I wanted to do, that was the biggest change for me. I started to make it was a level up of work. I wasn't just trying to fit into stuff. I was finding my own voice, finding my own inner creativity, and eventually that led me onto the kinds of projects I do now, and the project that I'm working on with the European Space Agency, which is called Space Station Earth, which is a project that I've developed, which is it's a show. Where you have all these images shot by astronauts on the International Space Station, and the music takes you on the emotional journey it attempts to take you on as much as possible the emotional journey that the astronauts go on when they visit the International Space Station, and it's just a big musical visual journey, a bit like Fantasia or Koyaanisqatsi. And that project's entirely of my own making, and we're in the midst of various stages of that at the moment. But still tying together my love of narrative and music, that and writing ballets I want to do, and being very particular about the film, television, and video game projects I choose to do. But like, for example, the David Attenborough Perfect Planet that I'm currently doing is, I'm doing that only because I have a lot of love in my heart for that, and it's saying a really important message. And I'm really proud to be able to collaborate with David again. And but the message it connects with my message on Space Station Earth. It's all about, everyone's saying it about looking after our planet and appreciating our planet.
100% agree.
I'm sorry, I feel like I deviated from your question there.
No worries.
Yeah.
No, that was fantastic. Thank you.
So, when you're sort of stuck on a song, essentially a writer's block, what seems to help you sort of get over that hump?
Everyone has their different ways of doing this. There's this great thing that you can download at the moment. It's like an audiobook that talks about it's about artists, very famous artists over the last century. It's all about what routine they had in the morning before they started working, and how they did their work. It's fascinating to listen to because this is something that everybody struggles with. For me, it's I have, I suppose, quite a simple thing, which is what I realized that I was putting this enormous amount of pressure on myself. And so somebody says to you, right, I want this really incredible piece of music. I want something as memorable as the Superman theme or something. Like they set you some impossible, daunting task. And then you go to your studio and you sit down in front of your piano keyboard, and you know, I'd sit there and I'd think, all right, here I am. I'm sat in front of these 88 black and white notes, and these are the same 88 black and white notes that Wagner sat in front of, that Tchaikovsky sat in front of, that Beethoven sat.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, you know, that John Williams sits in front of, you know. How do you begin? Pick a note, start. I mean, how can you? How can you sit there and it's like, okay, someone has asked me to write a really memorable work of complete genius, and I've got to hand it in by the end of the week. How do you begin to do that? I have no idea how you begin to do that. So what I do is I think, all right, look, can I write a work of complete and utter genius by 6 o'clock and go for a pint at the pub with my mates? Probably not. That's really difficult to do. But could I write something really average by 6 o'clock and get to the pub and have a pint with my mates? Definitely. I can definitely do that.
Yeah.
And so it's about, for me, it's about removing the psychological obstacle. I'm like, I'm just going to write something, even if it's terrible, because if it's terrible, I can write something new tomorrow, or I can improve it, or maybe it would be brilliant. Who knows? But just write something. And that's my thing. Because if you go to bed at night and you haven't written anything, that's when the anxiety sets in. That's when you want to ring up the network, the studio, the games company, the ballet, the Royal Opera House, and say, hey guys, actually you picked the wrong person. I can't do this. I just got lucky the other times. So just write something, improve it later. That's my way of getting through it. But it's a really tough one. Mm-hmm. And if I could just expand on that a little bit, because the
of course
process just fascinates me. I'm really so interested in it because, you know, what is it when you have, why is it that one group of notes is just a random mess of a group of notes and another group of notes is a tune? And I always think that, you know, if I drew 5 lines on a piece of paper, it would just be a scribble, right? But if Picasso drew 5 lines on a piece of paper, that would be something. And why is that? And I think the reason is that there's a moment at which the 5 lines of the piece of paper, the 8 notes that you've put together, stop just being a random bunch of lines or a random bunch of notes, and they start to mean something. They become greater than the sum of their parts. And that's what you're looking for. That's the magic. It's not just a group of notes. It has meaning and feeling, and that's what you're looking for. And you know, how do you get to that point? I don't know. Is it that you're just, you know, is it like general relativity? It's sort of all existed already, and everything is following something that even if you can't see it, and you just find these group of notes that they were always there, they just hadn't been discovered yet. Right. Or is it that I'm breathing life into these notes? I don't know. I don't know how to answer that one, but it's an interesting question.
Yeah, that is
fantastic. Yeah.
And it's something you never really think about too. I mean, and
I torture myself thinking if only I could work out the answer to that, my job would be so much easier.
Right.
No, very good point. So and further building off of that, what with what you've learned and with your experience, what advice would you share to composers who either you know, hear the composers that they listen to on, you know, film and when they go to the theater, or composers who have been doing it for a while and are, you know, are keep going? What advice would you give to them what advice would you give to them in terms of I'm sorry, I'm blanking on my question here.
just how to build on one's career.
Exactly. Yes.
Well, I mean, I wouldn't presume to give any advice to anyone who's already working, because God knows they could probably give me some advice. But I think I mean, everyone always asks, and I think starting out, I think it's a very difficult landscape. When I started out, it was really niche. Now everybody wants to do it, and I think that my advice, what I would do if I was starting out now, is I would work across every discipline. I would make sure I was working in video games. I wouldn't just focus on film or television. I would focus on all the different disciplines. And I would also, if I had time in between trying to find projects, and the way that I found projects are short films, just building relationships from the ground up. There are people that there's people that I made short films with who now, editing Mission Impossible, and like all sorts. People have, go on. Everyone starts somewhere. Ridley Scott made short films too, right? So you do all of that work, and plenty of it, and get in with people from the ground up. I'm not sure what the equivalent is in computer games. Maybe it's like, doing a mobile app computer game or something, and work your way towards the bigger stuff. But also, I think, write an album. It's so easy. It wouldn't be possible. I mean, it's not easy. The writing isn't easy, but the technical side of it is, when I started out, it would have been impossible to do something like that. Not impossible, but it would have been very expensive and difficult. Technically, it would have been very demanding.
Yeah.
Much easier now. And I just think, well, you've got time. Write an album, make your voice heard, because I feel like we've got sort of two categories really that in style at the moment, and I'm not casting any opinion on what's better or worse, but there is a lot of very functional music that's going on in video games and television and film, that follows a sort of quite clear system of composition. And for me, that work is very craft based, and you can learn that. And then you've got another thing that's sort of almost the opposite, and not much in between, that's very, very artistic. People just creating these mad, incredible, beautiful albums, being asked to do movie scores, sometimes lacking some of the technique that they should have for that, but writing incredible music, and that's very, very sort of art based and not craft based. And I think, why not do everything? Do a bit of everything. Express yourself in all these different ways. Push at all these different doors. Create as much as possible. Grab every opportunity that comes your way. But put music out there, because it's easy to nowadays.
Mm-hmm.
Wonderfully said too.
Definitely. So then, sort of branching off from that, then, what are some things that you wish you knew about composing for various forms of media prior to actually starting it?
What are some things I wish I'd known? I'm trying to think. I'm sure there must be some terribly embarrassing mistakes that I made early on, and I would be delighted to share them. But I can't quite think of anything
No worries.
Off the top of my head. I think that you need. I think just learning the disciplines is really important. I think I didn't know this, but I got handed this by chance, which is that I think a lot of people go into writing music for screen and video games because thinking that it's an opportunity to be a good composer.
Mm-hmm.
But what I would say is it's not really. You're a narrative storyteller. It's like a costume designer. Costume designer is not a clothes label, is not designing catwalks. That's a different job. Now, if what you wanted to do is just design clothes like catwalk style, then go into that. Don't go into movies. If what you want to do is help tell a story through the art form of creating clothes, then be a costume designer for a movie. And that's the same with writing music for movies or for any of these disciplines. If your job is to be a narrative storyteller, and that comes before writing music. If the scene that you're writing needs a high note and that's it, well, that's the job. It just needs a high note. It's not there for you. The scene isn't there for you to just write music that you fancy. The scene demands what it needs, and your job is to give it what it needs. It may be nothing. You know, there's the film The Birds, where Herman said to Hitchcock, "This doesn't need any music. I'm not going to write a score for this one," and that was his creative contribution. And so that's really important, because what Herman knew was that his job was to help tell the story through the medium of making music, or in this instance, of not making music. And so if what you want to do is write music, go be a composer, write some concert hall music or something. If what you want to do is tell stories, then through the medium of music, then that's the right, then you're starting to think along the right lines. And with that, and again, this is what I had by accident that I was referring to at the beginning, is I did half literature, half music in my degree, and I focused a lot on the literature. I really loved it, and what that gave me was a really foundational understanding of the art of narrative storytelling. And if I was teaching a film scoring course, the first thing I would do is I would say, go and buy a book about script writing. Understand how scripts are made, how films are structured, what the narrative arc is. I would tell people to read Aristotle's Poetics, which holds the DNA for every possible kind of theatrical storytelling. Understand the medium in which you are working and the fact that you are telling a story, and then apply your art to it.
Excellent response. Yeah. So then, at what point do you know had a song for a scene or a theme for a character, for example, is actually finished, and that it serves the purpose that it is meant to serve?
I think that you never know. I mean, sometimes often the first thing I write, it will stick around for a bit, and then eventually I'll go back and I'll change it, I'll replace it with something else. You know, you throw stuff at it, and sometimes it sticks and sometimes it doesn't stick. And you know, sometimes I've written something and then my collaborator has said, "Oh, well, maybe we should change it," and then you change it. In fact, I did this on my own project, the space thing. I changed it, and then I came back to it a while later, and I was like, "This is wrong. I've got to go back to the first thing." You just, I don't know. As you work more and more on the project, it's all malleable. It's like a piece of clay. You can. It's wet and it's malleable, and you can change all the different things on it and make it, shape it, do what you want. But slowly it starts to solidify. And then eventually there comes a point where you need to put it in the oven to set, right? But yeah, you're just, that's the only way I can explain it. You're just playing with it all the time and making it better. And sometimes you're like, actually that bit just isn't right and I'm going to change it, or, you know, but it's if you could see me, I'm like moving my hands. It's hard to explain. It's just, the sense of it grows over time.
It's a natural thing. It comes together. At least,
You do occasionally have a eureka moment.
Yes.
Yeah.
few and far between. And sometimes you look back on it and you wonder, don't you, when you you wonder and you think, was that was that a eureka moment, when they wrote that pop song,
Yeah.
yeah, it's really hard to know, isn't it, did they know that was an absolute smash when they did it, or did they know? I remember working with this very, I can't say because these people are still alive, but this very old and esteemed editor who had cut like one of the great classic huge themes with a very famous theme that everyone would know. And I remember him telling me that this composer, who's still alive, one of the true greats, that this theme that everybody knows and loves now, that when they first heard it, they were like, "Oh God, really? That just sounds a bit like this." The editor and director were really unimpressed. So but when I hear that theme now, I wish I could say who it was. If you heard that theme now, you'd be like, no, surely the minute you heard that, you would be like, that knocked it out of the park. But it's kind of not really like that.
Interesting, yeah.
And Ilan, we don't want to take too much more of your time. And so I got this last question for you that kind of comes way out of left field. But we got to know, out of all of the great works that you've written and all the different media that you have composed for, what is your go-to snack or drink when composing music?
What is my go-to snack or drink? I am definitely, it changes over time, but right now, I drink a lot of tea, cups of tea all day. I enjoy a biscuit, a cookie, and sometimes a traditional one. But more recently, I'm slightly embarrassed. I'm not sure why I'm embarrassed. Slightly embarrassed to say that I've gotten into baking chocolate chip cookies with my daughter.
Oh,
that's awesome. That's not embarrassing at all. Don't worry.
So that's always a nice little treat. Either that or that's really it. Yeah, just always looking forward to that snack, and also when I can, just finishing in the afternoon and getting up to the pub for a quick pint before dinner time. Oh, look, I'm right on cue. Here she is. I was just talking about you. Do you want to say hello to all the people?
Hi.
Hello.
Hi there.
Go off and play. I'll be with you in a minute.
Well, Ilan, with you on the tea.
In 1 minute. Sorry, guys. Yeah.
Oh, no worries. No worries.
Yeah, we're good. We're
good. So is that it?
Yeah, we wanted to thank you for taking the time to listen with us. I guess we kind of should have said at the beginning of the interview, but Indie Composers is really about providing an environment where composers can network, promote themselves, and then learn. And so we really appreciate you taking the time to interview with us so that everyone can benefit from this and hear what you have to say.
Yeah, it's a total pleasure, and I thoroughly believe in offering something back to the community. So if people want to message me some questions or anything on Instagram or about the interview, I'm always happy to answer as soon as I've got a few minutes to do it.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much.
Yeah, not at all. Well, thank you very much for having me on.
Absolutely, and best wishes to you. Stay safe, stay healthy.
Let me know when you're going to put it out so I can support on the various socials.
Absolutely. Right. We're thinking next Friday, and we're going to send you updates throughout the week on the video, and it's going to be audio only. There's going to be a video component for YouTube, and yeah.
Brilliant. All right. Well, that's wonderful. Thanks very much.
Absolutely.
All right.
Have a great day. Stay safe.
You too.
You too, man.
Bye.